Hello and most welcome to 788. Let's see if we can get some more light here. Of our H series, I'm currently at the local library here in Vårgårda. It's about 70 kilometers from the second largest town of Sweden, that is Gothenburg. It is a very clement day today. Way too clement to be January. It's about 2-3 plus and sunny and green. What do you know? It's January and it's green. Go figure that one. Well, from one wondrous thing, and we might as well slip over to another wondrous thing. What on earth is this epistemology? And I would like to start this lecture that I termed epistemology with a quotation mark and a question mark. What on earth is this? Epistemology is how do we know? What is the foundation of our knowledge? And it's actually a complete subject, usually under the heading of either philosophy or some similar in linguistics. It's going to tell us where does our knowledge stem from. Well, obviously it's the misuse of the word stem from and foundation that we take directly from Wittgenstein. To say that there is a foundation for language, for instance, something that Noam Chomsky is trying to show, it's an impossibility, it's overuse or misuse of a certain feature in language that means foundation, and to put a question together with language places us outside the world all of a sudden. And I have to do this outside of the world. It's not really possible to exit the world. So it's similar to this elevation of consciousness. It doesn't go anywhere. It ceases to be. I think that's a more correct description, as long as we have that in our head of our heads. And as long as we don't forget that, we could be free to do what we want to do with thinking. And one important trait here is definitely to understand that the search for foundation is in itself a big problem. Just to have the idea that it should be a foundation, it's something that points to a rather radical misunderstanding of everything. And of course this is what leads to this fixation I mentioned earlier, that we fixate on a position, how we stand, we brace our knees, we drag our shoulders in, and we do other rather horrid stuff to our bodies in order to stop movement and to gain balance. And of course it's very hard here to tell whether it's the hen or the egg that started the whole process. What was it, the gripping, was it the tensing, what was it, the bracing in our bodies, or was it the tendency to, in thinking, looking for an absolute origin of everything? And I think the answer to that question is it happens exactly at the same time. There is no time difference. Body and mind are two aspects of one of the same thing, and that also points to we can start with one thing, we can sort of model our body and learn via our body, but in the end we need to do it simultaneously. Doesn't make much sense only to have one thing. This is not how it works. And if we continue to do that for a very long time, for a short time it's quite natural. We cannot consistently train both aspects at the same time, all the time. It's quite alright to sort of separate them time-wise during the day and say, now I'm training the mind and now I'm training the body. But the aim should always be to have them walk parallel, side by side, and that is very, very important. Because we need to make that sense, the only sense we can make, and that is the togetherness, that they go hand in hand, are never separable, never to be severed, and they work in consort. And the refinement you can see after a while comes because working them parallel makes them come alive again. And how odd it even might feel, it was going to feel really odd to try and train the body and the mind at the same time. It seems like two absolutely disjunct things, a little bit like I can say swim and watching telly, things that are not connected at all. And here you need to understand why you do it. That's complementarity comes in. We understood that the universe is in its foundation two different things, in contrast to what we normally perceive. As I mentioned earlier on, epistemology says there is one origin, and that origin is situated in the past. It's a distance from the origin and the now. That doesn't hold for the two aspects of reality. They are permanently now, as well as in the past and in the future. And this is I want to mention here. They come together in movement because when we move, we think and do things at the same time. There is no possibility for movement without thinking. And by sort of pinpointing extra strong to that fact, we come to an understanding that they are simultaneous. They get extra simultaneous in the real moment. I mentioned in the last lecture 787 that everything can be stored in the moment. There is no possibility for the brain to store all bits of information, but a movement has that storage capacity that cannot be found in the brain or any supercomputer, not even the entire universe, but the fractionality that the movements are being fractal makes it possible for them to store everything that ever existed, everything that everybody on this earth, past and future and current, had thought, intended, felt, sensed, etc. Everything can be stored in the moment. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to train one's thinking capacities, because what you learn is doing the movement, the mental movement. You produce certain memories that are movement. These movements informs everything. And in this process you will also be able to find stillness. There can be no stillness in the chasm between mind and matter. There always going to be antagonist forces, and they always are going to disrupt you. But that gets buried in the movement. Movement is the only possibility for any stillness, any sharpness, any stable view of anything. The static picture is a picture that's not correct, and that is always going to be blurred, hazy, because it's not in sync. So it sort of permanently stays out of the motion. And this is the reality most people are living with now. A sort of moving thing that never stops ever. And here I do come to another point of the whole thing. Knowledge in the modern concept is an idea of fragmentization. It's fragmented in many different ways. If you look into the, for instance, kurskatalog, how do you say, paper over the different courses at the university, you will find like 500 nowadays. There's no end to them. They're all fragmented, they're all different, and they try to sort of take a glimpse of more and more difference in reality, partitioning everything. And these knowledge have nothing to do with you as a person. It's out there. And one way of terming this after Newton is calling it technological knowledge. I don't have a whiteboard here, I will have to the next lecture. But there's an easy word to remember, technological knowledge. And that is that you use knowledge for a purpose. It has a singular true-like purpose. It's not knowledge for itself, it's knowledge for something that the knowledge sort of is underneath. It's an hierarchical position of being subordinate to the idea of a purpose of the knowledge. And this is of course stemming from technology, where every tool has its purpose, and you build a machine in the order of, in the order to be the corrected one. This way of looking at knowledge is completely new. It doesn't have much history to it, but it's the absolute dominant feature of knowledge today. We see knowledge as something not for me, not having anything to do with me as a person, what I want, what I'm meant to become. And to see, even as Frederick Matthias Alexander stated in the early 20th century, that his knowledge had sort of given him more of the sky, given him more of life, given him an inside and an outside and a depth. That just seems odd today to say such a thing. Knowledge is compartmentalized, you can measure it even, you can get your points, but it doesn't give you, like he indicated, a good health. That used to be the case, and that is still the purpose of knowledge. It wouldn't be knowledge otherwise, and if it doesn't make you more balanced, if it doesn't make your system work better, if it doesn't lead you to the future and makes it possible for you to understand the future better, it cannot be counted as knowledge. And this sort of fixation of the technological model for knowledge is taking away knowledge, putting a distance between you and me, and it leads to this, as I see it, incredibly awkward way of understanding things. You put yourself in a weird position where you're not, for instance, read the text and it's very distant from you. You don't feel with it, you don't go into the text, you don't believe in it. You're supposed to look at it from a distance, objectively, forehand. And obviously this is imitating science for some mad reason. Let science be science, especially the technological science of Newton. And let knowledge be something that actually matters to you as a person, that makes your life blossom, and it makes you healthier, stronger, with more stamina. That is knowledge. And this is of course something that Alan Bloom forgot to mention. He just upset that the Western canon is disappearing quickly. Well, I'd say the reason for it to disappear this quickly, as it has, took a couple of decades, is because we're separated. We're separated. Shakespeare doesn't mean anything to us. We read it from a distance, we take it apart, we make it into nothing, and then we put it together. We could say to other people, hey, actually it was nothing, it's just a bunch of letters, words, sentences. And I take this little paragraph out of the context and I'm going to look very hard at it. And then I lost everything, all what it means. And this is exactly the same as taking nice melody and separating each note by each note and trying to get some context in them afterwards to say, no, there's no melody. There's no such a thing as music. It's just a bunch of notes. You see, the music doesn't mean anything when we do that. It becomes an incredible, fragmented, meaningless thing. And the same thing we've done with literature, we've done that with history, we've done that with so many subjects. My own subject is constructed as a device to fragmentize everything, to make it distant, obscure, distinct. Nothing for me. And we were supposed to go into a mood of not existing when we read linguistics. Same went with logic. I think one of my fellow students once said, logic is fantastic. It takes you from yourself, your own little limited way of looking at things, and let you sort of look into the eternity of eternal truth of logic. Oh my God. All the things that made me react. The way to knowledge is destroy knowledge. Is that what it was? That what he said? It's a bit odd when you think of it. Something that is a joke. I saw a sketch many years ago how students dissected a frog, took it apart, and then one student raised his arm and said, oh, now I'm finished with my study thing. How do I put the frog together again? We think we can heal knowledge after we cut it apart and made it into a tool or something for a purpose, not a superior purpose, a subordinate purpose, small purpose. How do we heal it? Well, that's not dissected from the beginning. Then the damage is going to be done already. There is never ever any need to dissect anything from any piece of literature. You read it and you get into it. You experience it. And it's just like music, you listen to it. There's no other way. You are the only one who can experience it. And you need to be there, you need to be conscious, you need to be balanced. Because the more balanced you are, the more of the music you are going to understand. And to examine it, well, thank God it doesn't happen, but it is very similar what is done to literature and poems, taken apart, destroyed. And then people say, I don't feel any meaning in life. Well, it's no wonder we deliberately took meaning out of the term, and we took knowledge away as well. And there is a good solution. Nietzsche couldn't solve this. He said that science is taking away knowledge. We can't know anything for certain when God is no longer around, when there is no purpose of anything. It need not to be that way. we can heal knowledge, and we can learn to heal ourselves by doing simultaneously something with our mind and the body at the very same time. And I'd say that's how knowledge always been taught. My favorite subject many years ago was Renaissance painting, and painting had in the 17th century a healing effect. It put you together, it made you one person, and even recorded by certain Renaissance painters that they could paint themselves out of diseases. Even the plague was mentioned. I do believe that. You get so much stronger if you get into the movement, and the movement in itself is healing. It's a healing frequency, because the more complexity you gain in the fractality, the fractal dimension, the stronger it gets. You get stronger in that process. You get like directedness in the body, and you feel more balance, you feel more whole, and you get that calmness that technological knowledge sort of bars makes impossible. And it's not technology in itself that makes this fragmentation. I think that's a conclusion from many people these days, especially in media. If you look at it, it's technology. This society is not built for humans. I would not really say that. Yes, technology has something to do with it, but it's the imitating of the knowing capacity of technology that's the problem. That's how the fragmentation started. And we need to go back to before the fragmentation actually started to understand why we did it. Why was the search to fragmentize, so to dissect? Well, of course, lack of balance, lack of bodily balance, and lack of sort of nice counterforce in the mind, that they need to go together, the healthy mind and a healthy body. And by getting all subjects together, sort of healing them and not seeing them as disjunct, and never say to yourself, this is not part of this subject. Everything is part of every subject. You come into the picture. Your health, what you're eating, how is your energy, what are you thinking, in what environment are you? Is this a healthy environment? Is this not part of reality? You see, it's this taking things apart literally. And why did one spend gazillions of pounds, dollars before in establishing nice environment, aesthetic environment? Like the Romans and the Renaissance, like Florence, when they didn't have much spare time, when they didn't have much wealth. Why did they do that? Of course, to gain knowledge, because that's an excruciating important part of learning something. Learning will never ever be the same in this environment as sitting now. Cannot happen. We are never not part of reality. We have never been outside of reality. And just the very thought that my material instantiation in this moment doesn't count, it's already a really bad start, I'd say. That's a bit like if you were a doctor and a patient comes in and say, no, I'm not treating patients at the whole, you leave my office and I'm going to do the diagnose by myself without looking at you. That will never happen. I think that some people think that will happen. You can just look into a computer. No, it will never ever happen. And that's a mistake of the mind. And this mistake of the mind we mentioned so many times is a mistaken idea what language is. It's not a mistake in what technology is capable of. But it's not a technological question at all. So I'm quite certain there's going to be some people who's going to listen to this lecture and think it's a criticism of the modern society. It's not. It's not even a criticism of the educational system. What we need to learn, myself as well, is that everything comes together. And that's a gradual realization, and you need to understand it. And once you start understanding it, you will change your environment. You will make it nicer. You will change your position like I did now. You will sit more comfortable and you will take care of yourself, because you see that will affect the knowledge. It will not be the same. It will never ever be the same. It's not the same reading, learning something in a nice university in Florence, or doing it here in this beton box. It doesn't. I don't dislike this place. It's not that. I don't think it's inappealing. That wouldn't help me. But it's not the same thing. Will never ever be the same thing. And that is very important to understand. And I think this is the idea of knowledge being general, universal, and people sort of can have the same knowledge somehow. This is the identity idea. I have the same knowledge, yes. He or she does. It doesn't make any sense. The knowledge is for you and nobody else. That knowledge and that level you have, you achieve that one. And that's the whole difference. And you do that in your body because it's stored in the movement. And the capacity for the movement to store information, knowledge, wisdom, actually, spirituality, resilience, stamina, all those things will be in the movement. Everything can get stored there because the capacity to store is infinite, literally infinite. So already the idea of a brain storing things, and it works like library, already that will sort of diminish knowledge. Just that pretense or illusion is. So think of our learning capacity as completely unlimited. Doesn't have any limit, because there is no limit in fractality. And one other thing, and last thing I'm just going to put in, I'm going to return to this, and that's consciousness. With fractality, you understand that it can actually read itself off and become conscious. And that's something we mentioned before about conscious control. But that is actually achievable. That is an important part of learning, is achieving self-consciousness, slowly, bit by bit, but eternally getting more and more conscious, that evolving, making a soul for oneself, instead of saying it's an existence that you cling to. You actually create it for yourself in the movement. It doesn't have to be proposition in the memory bank of the head. It will be something real, something you actually do. And that is, of course, the difference between something being ontic, that's dependent on it being a positive judgment, and it's depending on marginalizing what it's not. It's so dependent, it's so weak. And the other one is in the movement. You have your spirituality in the movement, in how you actually move and think. And that one nothing can beat. That is consciousness. The movement can be self-conscious, obviously, Pfeiffer showed that with his robots. They change their behavior. There is bound to be some sort of consciousness in this machine, although it is definitely very small, no doubt, but it is there, because if you see a change of movement, there is consciousness. But there is no consciousness in rigidity and the static. There can be no consciousness. A mirroring idea or passively sitting is a lack of consciousness. It's a blocking out of a possibility. And that possibility is always round the corner. It's always accessible. I think I round up there. It's a beautiful day today. Look at that. The sun is returning with all this fractality. Okay, I say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.